Robert, how are you? What's so funny about that?
I don't know. Nobody calls me Robert,
I know,
except my kids when they make fun of me.
Yeah, that's kind of why I like to call you Robert sometimes.
When do you ever call me Robert?
I call you Robert on this podcast.
Oh, do you?
If you haven't noticed, I will often start it with, Robert, how are you? Just to get a reaction.
Joshy, I'm doing well, buddy.
Welcome, everybody, to Beyond Sunday, Joel and Rob's podcast.
Are we keeping that beginning?
What? Yes, definitely.
Okay. All right, cool.
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah. How are you?
Excuse me.
Got a little cough.
I have a cough just from my exercising this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing to be afraid of right now. Dun, dun, dun! You have a cough. No, I'm doing okay. I'm tired, but other than that, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine.
You look spiffy.
Well, thanks.
Your glasses, your button up, and your cardi.
I love these vests right here. Yep, wearing the glasses a little more these days.
You rock it. You rock that look.
Thank you.
It's very kind of.
I like it.
It's sharp,
but also relaxed.
Relaxed at the
Yes.
same time.
And
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
what I need. Yep.
Yep.
Let's get going.
Let's do it.
What do you got for us today?
This is inspired by yours from last week.
Ooh, are we dipping into the 70s?
We're dipping into 70s, and we're going iconic.
I should know it.
Partridge Family, iconic. You'll know this immediately.
Okay. Starting to wonder, where are you going? You know, I saw this recently and said, how have we not done this yet?
I know. It's that iconic.
Yes. It's almost too iconic. Like you just know it immediately. Which is great,
Yeah.
but
In all honesty, that very, very beginning, they don't really do.
well, I had no idea what you were playing at first.
Yeah.
But that's the actual part, that's the beginning of this theme song.
Yes, except in, like after like the first season or whatever, that part got cut out.
So were you a consistent watcher of The Bunch?
Was I?
Yeah. Did you watch it?
I've seen a lot of it. I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of their episodes, but no, it was never one of my favorites. It was more like one of those shows that was in syndication growing up.
Yeah.
And so you just, it's on. It's on TV in the 80s, right? Daytime TV was atrocious when we were growing up, right?
It's not like it is now. Oh my gosh, yeah.
It was soap operas.
Yeah.
Talk shows hadn't even really developed yet, right? Maybe Donahue. Remember Donahue?
Yes, and Sally Jesse Raphael.
Maybe they were around, but like what
Donahue.
kid wants to watch Donahue? So
Yeah.
our shows were our daytime shows
Were 70s
were
reruns.
70s,
You're so
syndicated.
right. Yep. Yeah.
and so that's why I watched it. Never had a particular
Yeah.
love for the show or anything.
Yeah.
Yes, saw a lot of it.
Yeah, I did. The one episode that when I think of Brady Bunch, when I think of the Bunch, I always go back.
Bunch.
That's a line from Good Will Hunting. Or Good Will Hunting?
Oh,
Matt Damon.
great movie.
Excellent movie. But who was it? Casey Affleck. And someone says something negative about the Brady Bunch, and he calls them out. How dare you talk about the Bunch like that? He's like, from now on, I gotta call them the Bunch. I love it. The episode where they go to Hawaii. Remember that one?
It's Ben Affleck, by the way, not Casey Affleck.
They're both in it.
Are they?
Yes.
Who's Casey Affleck?
Casey Affleck is one of their crew.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. So how messed up of me for correcting you, and then you good for you. Yeah, my bad.
I'm just going to let you walk into it. If
I
you
need
want
to shut up. Whenever it comes into cinema, I need to learn my lesson. You will always be better. Cinema is your thing, baby.
It kind of is. I'm just going to
Yeah.
name it. Yeah.
The fact that we could even call out Casey Affleck. You asked me who Ben Affleck's brother is. Well, I don't know.
You've seen movies that he's been in.
Oh, of
sure.
course I have.
He's
Sure.
actually he's a good actor. Good Will Hunting is just a great movie. Oh my gosh, that comes on I'm done. I'm in. It's like Step Brothers.
It's Step Brothers.
I'm in. You know?
Yeah, Wedding Crashers.
So they go to California and they get this
Tommy Boy.
this medallion. I think Greg gets it, where I can't remember why, but it's cursed, and so bad things happen to them. But then am I thinking, or am I bringing in Flipper right now, where they're submerged in the water and there's sharks above them? Maybe I think I'm conflating two episodes right there. But I always remember the episode where they go to Hawaii. Do you recall that one? That's the one that always stands out in my mind.
Maybe vaguely. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. I like the bunch, but you have a good way of describing it. It was just, it was on in the afternoons. We watched it.
Yeah.
You know, like the Partridge Family.
Yeah.
You know? All right, so we're in week 2 of our sermon series, Less is More. And this past week was less pride and more peace. Mm-hmm. And so we're trying to talk about sin in a way, not simply specific acts that it is predominantly and usually talked about, mm-hmm. but instead the kind of the blinders that kind of prevent us from living into the life that God invites us into.
Yeah.
And so we talked about pride at first being kind of naming that has an incredibly good quality to it, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. That there's something very healthy about it.
I'm glad you're reiterating that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
I think that was because that was needed, that you talked about. But then we kind of dove into the flip side of it, the slippery slope of it, mm-hmm. that it can quickly become something that takes us away from living into the life God leads us to. And how, I like that part, how slippery a slope it is. It can happen very easily.
Oh, yeah.
And it's actually, I would say, for so much of us, it's an unconscious thing that we do. We don't even realize it. So we talked about how we end up leading, it goes into trying to access our self-worth in other endeavors. And they're all, as I thought more about it, it's very natural for us to do this. It's almost human to try and access our self-worth. We talked about education and sports and work and just upward mobility, like trying to find our self-worth in these other areas.
Yeah, all the things that you and I are personally living on a daily basis, right? And it's such a part of the fabric of the world in which we live that it's really hard to discern the difference between being proud of who you are and trying to prove your worth.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is really the slippery slope.
Yeah.
So as a father, one of the things that I'm always wrestling with is that very fine line, right, between encouraging my children in academics or sports or music or whatever it may be, encouraging them, supporting them, gently, even sometimes pushing them to new growing edges.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, wanting desperately to make sure that they understand, while it's good to explore your growing edges, and to taste and to experience and to pursue new things, no matter what happens, right? Success or failure, if you get an A or an F, if you make the team or get cut, none of that gets to determine your worth.
Yeah.
You know, if you studied and did your best for that test, that's what matters. Yeah. simply that you gave it your effort. Not it doesn't matter. Who you are is not defined by the grade you get,
Yep.
or your batting average, or if you make the varsity team, or whatever the case.
Yep.
And it's a very fine line.
Yeah.
In part because I don't want them feeling pressure to prove who they are.
Right. Yep.
Right? To
Yep.
prove their worth, either to me or to their teachers or to themselves. And I think we can do a pretty good job as parents making sure that our kids don't have to prove their worth to us.
Yeah.
But our world is set up in almost every way to force people to prove their worth to themselves.
Yes.
And how do we as parents help our children counter that when we ourselves are struggling to counter that, as we talked about in our sermon?
Absolutely. I was thinking back to my first semester in seminary. So unlike you went right after undergrad.
Yep.
I had 10 years in between. And honestly loved not being in school. Like I was graduate undergrad and was like, yeah, I'm done. This is great.
I'm outie 5 outie, yeah.
No more tests, but then felt the itch to go back and went back and got in. And I remember that first exam, that fall semester, early church history. And oh my gosh, how much of my own self-worth I had put on that exam. Do I belong here?
Mm-hmm.
You know, am I gonna, do I deserve to be here? And if I don't, what does that say about me and who I think I am?
Amen.
And the pressure was huge. And I did well and graduated, but I remember that to me is an example of
You were
that.
sweating it.
Oh gosh.
You were sweating it.
It was more than just an exam. It was, who do I think I am? But even more than that, what's the degree of how I understand my self-worth at this time?
Wow.
And so I think what we're trying to do in this series too is just name, my gosh, we struggle with all of these that we're going to be talking about.
Well said.
So we can talk about academics, we can talk about sports, we can talk about work and upward mobility. It's all there for us.
Yeah, and that very slippery slope between pursuing, what we said in our sermon. Achievements are great. It's great to pursue things and make achievements, but it's the why, right? Why are you pursuing them?
Yes.
Are you pursuing them because it's your passion, it's your love, that it fulfills you, that it is your gifts meeting the world's needs?
Yeah.
Or are you pursuing it because you're only as good as your latest accomplishment?
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I was thinking about what happens when we don't accomplish what we set out to do, right? And then how that kind of can find its home then in a very depleted sense of self-worth. So I was thinking about failure, and I was telling you about this. We had talked about failure at men's group a couple days ago, and the need for confession. And I talked to them about that night. This website called Failure Lab. It's in Michigan. But I'm fascinated by it in that people are given the opportunity to get up in an auditorium and share their story of falling on their face. Some are huge, some are smaller moments, 10 minutes long. But the power of naming it, of confessing, which is what we're talking about. There is just this power in naming where my lack of, where I'm putting my self-worth right now.
Yeah.
Shining light on it. And like I've been thinking about, okay, so what are what are some ways that we can live into this peace that we're talking about, right? The sermon title was Less Pride, More Peace. And this peace we get from knowing who and whose we are.
Yeah.
And that's one way, I think, too, of just to kind of confess, to note that, yeah, I failed that test and it's crushed me. And it's now saying something about my identity and self-esteem and self-worth. So let's name it.
Yeah.
Let's be honest and open and truthful about it.
Well said.
You know?
And it's not just with achievements either, right? It's also with other sin. You know, I failed to be kind. I failed to be generous. I failed to be honest. But even those failures don't get to define us.
Yes. Yep.
You know, it's the beauty of grace. It's the beauty of being named and claimed by God before we do or say or don't do or don't say anything.
Yeah. Yep.
You know?
Yep.
And we spend our lives pursuing, I think, pursuing proof of our worthiness.
Yeah.
And most of the time, at the very end of the day, I really think the person we're trying to prove is ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we just struggle to accept, you know, that God says we are beloved. We are God's beloved child. It's one of my favorite things about baptism. Some traditions don't baptize babies.
Yeah.
You have to confess Jesus as your Lord, and then they baptize you. And there's a lot of theological reasons that go behind that.
Sure.
In our tradition, we baptize babies. We baptize anybody who wants to be baptized. But the reason I love infant baptism is because it proclaims, before this child has the opportunity to love God or reject God, before this child has the opportunity to be a quote-unquote good person or bad person.
Before this child has any idea who or what God is.
Yes, amen. Or who they are, right?
Yes.
Or who they are. Before
Yes.
any of that, what baptism reveals is that God names and claims that child as God's own.
Yeah.
And we believe that that's true not just for those who get baptized, but also for everyone. Baptism is the symbol of it, but that doesn't mean it's not true for those who aren't baptized, you know?
Yep.
So it's profoundly beautiful, I think. And yet we, in the church, right, we struggle with that. And that's one of the things that I was glad we got into in the sermon too, is you know, I shared this during the sermon. It's a quote that has stuck with me ever since I heard it.
Mm-hmm.
I was at a Presbyterian conference, and I heard the pastor quip, and yes, he was quipping.
I'm seeing that word all over the place now.
Are you?
Yeah.
He was
Book
quipping.
I'm reading right now. You
Quip.
used it twice
Quip.
recently. Yeah.
It's a good word. Q words are pretty good.
Yeah.
Anyway, the pastor quipped, you know, I find it strange that God never calls large church pastors to smaller churches.
Mm-hmm.
We pursue upward mobility.
Yeah.
And I'm being very transparent here. I did this, you know, my previous church was a smaller church. I loved that church. Don't get me wrong, and its ministry and its people, but I very much wanted to come to a larger church for specific reasons.
Yep.
And I'm grateful that I did, but don't get me wrong, it's also,
Me too.
The truth is, I mean, we pursue upward mobility. We measure churches' success by and large by various quantitative metrics.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. What are some ways that we can practice that peace of recognizing and remembering and living that we are a beloved child of God? Like, it's a lifelong journey. Like, it's something that we will be towards our last days, whenever that is. Hopefully it's a while from now. we'll still be working to claim it and to own it and to believe it and to trust it. Right? It's but what are some ways that, or how have you been able to, like, it's partially it's the weekly practice of coming to worship, like that's a huge part.
Yeah.
I forget if when I'm not making that, and I'm talking about as a pastor, just when I was coming to worship
Before you were a pastor.
Before I was a pastor, when I would be off for 2-3 weeks, I could sense a difference, in kind of remembering God's love.
Well, I think part of it is one of the things that you named so well in the first sermon on this series is confession, right? Confession isn't self-flagellation.
Mm-hmm.
It's not false humility. It's an opportunity to step back and reassess.
Yeah.
And the reason that's important is not just to see where you're off or where I'm off, right? Yeah, I missed here. Yeah, I missed here. Yeah, I missed here. I was okay there, but yeah, I missed here. It's not a lack of self-worth. It's say I'm off, and then it's to remember, but none of this claims me. It's an act of realigning your life to your identity.
Yeah.
In many ways, is your pursuits to your identity. How does what I do reflect who I know I am? That's so I think confession's a really big part of it. And the other one that I think you do a fabulous job of lifting up, and you've helped me here, is in Sabbath, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Is seeing the importance of Sabbath, and whether it's for a whole day or just a specified time. And this is admittedly, folks, something I suck at, just horribly.
You can't say that word on this podcast.
I can't.
No, you can.
Wasn't the S word that?
I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, I do. I am horrible at it. I am uncomfortable doing nothing.
So am I.
I really, really am. And part of that is, I'm just kind of a high energy, fidgety, go-do kind of guy. But part of it is very much that I'm more comfortable achieving.
Yeah.
Even if it's just something as silly as, vacuuming. I've achieved cleaning the house.
Yeah. I'm the same way.
So, yeah, but Sabbath forces you to stop.
Yes.
And not just stop. It's not rest for rest's sake, although it's good to rest. It's rest to recenter.
Yeah.
And to refocus again and to remember that nothing you do gets to define your worth.
I think that I'm happy you named it, because I think you're so right. The more I think and read about Sabbath and stop and resting and doing something that fills you with joy, yes. But I think it also incredibly connects to what we talked about this past week of naming those identities that we claim for ourselves that determine our self-worth.
Yeah.
And letting those go for a day. Letting them go and resting in who and whose we are.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is, I think, at the core of Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
You've worked 6 days, you've produced, but this is not who you are.
Your worth is not tied to your production.
Exactly.
Right, or your achievements.
Yes.
And so I think that's really the slippery slope for us, right? It's good to be proud of who you are, but who you are is, for the Christian, not defined by their accomplishments. Who we are is defined by whose we are.
Yeah.
And so I think the slippery slope for pride is, okay, what exactly are you proud of? Are you proud of what you've done? Is your worth, are you only proud of yourself? That's what it is. Are you only proud of yourself because of what you've done?
Mm.
Or are you proud of yourself because, damn it, God says, you are precious to me. You are honored in my sight, and I love you.
Yeah. And how we talked about being proud of yourself and your accomplishments, they only get you so far.
Yeah, because there's always more to prove, right?
Yep.
It doesn't matter how much you've achieved. It really doesn't. If your worth is tied to what you do, there will always be more to accomplish.
Yeah.
There will be more money to earn.
Yep.
There will be another promotion to get, another business to start. There will be more children to teach, more good to spread. I mean, it won't end.
Yep.
It won't end. That's the problem with that pursuit, is that the second you obtain that goal, you realize, oh, but that's not it. There's more.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for pastors, it's like, oh, okay, well, our church is this big. Well, why isn't it this big?
Yes.
Oh, why isn't it this big?
Yeah.
You know, it just keeps going.
Just keeps going. Yeah. Well said. Well, what's next Sunday?
Next Sunday is less idolatry, more clarity.
Nice. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Yeah. If you liked it, share it.
Please do.
And tune in on Sunday.
We will see you next week.